everybody, and howdy. All right, welcome. A couple of announcements for, well, we're one speaker short right now, but we'll get things going, and hopefully Bob will arrive. There's a change for change bucket in the back. We ask that you turn off cell phones, and if you have questions, wait until the speaker is finished, and then ask. In fact, our first rally is July 4th, and it's going to be right here in Continental Plaza. We've got a save the date sign back there, but George and I can fill you in a little bit on what we are planning. We're going to have a pancake breakfast, which starts at 7 until 8:30. We have 3 excellent speakers. We've got Joanna Mendoza, Laura Conover, and Paul, I forgot his last name. Say which?
Paul Stapleton-Smith from the AFL-CIO.
Yeah, from AFL-CIO. So, great speakers. We got great music lined up as well. We've got some singers. How many know the Hard Scrabble Road Band? Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're not having the band. But Larry Worcester, who is the lead of the band, I called him and he was so honored to participate, and he's going to come up with some great music for us as well. We're also going to have apple pie and ice cream. Can't get much more American than that. And we hope to be done by 10:30, 11. Other events that I want you to mark down on your calendar, if you got a list of events, the June calendar is in the back. Well, Bob Karp is supposed to be here this afternoon, but he's also going to join us June 13th with Addie Swallow and, of course, our own Jackie Anderson. Those are the 3 candidates running for LD19. We got to get Bob out there in front of everybody. He's a write-in candidate. Be sure that you fill in Bob Karp's name under the LD19 for State Senate, and fill in the black circle, just like, or the circle, turn it black, just like you do on the rest of the candidates. Bob has stepped up. He has run 3 times before. He's excellent. I don't understand why he doesn't win. So the 4th one is going to be a charm, I hope. He said last time 3rd was charm, but maybe it'll be more charming.
If you would like to volunteer to help us with our 4th of July, I have a sign-up sheet. I'm looking for volunteers. And I heard rumors that George and Martha Washington might be showing up for that. So, I just come and see who that is.
Well, that'll be fun. Cool. All right. Well, let's begin the program. Brian Matlock, running for mine inspector.
Thank you so much. Great to be back here again. They say that you're supposed to start off with a joke to kind of soften up the crowd, but all my mining jokes have too many dirty words. So a few months ago, or I don't think it's that long ago, we had the state committee meeting up in Apache Junction, where I'm first vice chair of the Apache Junction Democrats. And I was honored that they let me give a talk to the group. And today I would like to share the talk that I gave up there at the state committee meeting with you. It's kind of a highbrow, a little bit higher level type of a conversation. But what I'm trying to do is, today I really feel uplifted. I think we're about to turn a corner. I'm feeling really, really positive. So at the end of the talk, please feel free to ask me as detailed a question as you want, because I'm happy to get in the weeds with you. But I really want to share this talk with you. So, my name is Brian Matlock, and I'm running to be the next Arizona State Mine Inspector. I'm running because I believe the safety of Arizona's miners deserves a hands-on, experienced leader in the State Mine Inspector's office. I'm not a career politician. I've never run for public office. I'm a Marine veteran, a mechanical engineer, and someone who has spent decades in heavy industry working in mining operations here in Arizona and all around the world. I have actually worked alongside the very people that the State Mine Inspector's office is intended to protect. I'm running because I've seen what works and what fails when it comes to industrial safety, and I've built my career on solving problems in some of the toughest environments in the world. And now I want to bring that experience to serve you, the people of Arizona. I'm often asked, why should a Democrat be the state mine inspector? And I'll say, because of our shared values. For example, I believe that everyone deserves a fair paying job. And that's exactly what FDR proposed in the Second Bill of Rights. He even included mining along with farming. But I want to add to that. I believe that every worker should be expected to be able to come home at the end of a hard day's work without injury and without distress. That's one of our core values. And it's also part of a good paying job. And that's why I think a Democrat should be in the role of the state mine inspector. But I can tell you there's another reason why we should have a Democrat as the state mine inspector, and that is because the legislature is almost asking us to have a Democrat be in that role. How does that work? If you look at our state mining laws, almost all of them have to do with protecting our miners, our workers. And protecting our workers is in the Democratic Party's DNA. That's why we need to have a Democrat as the state mine inspector. I will be the first state mine inspector in a half a century to bring our democratic values to the state mine inspector's office. When AJ Dems was, Apache Junction Dems was first starting up, we had our happy hours. And people would come in and say, you know what, it is so nice to be around other Democrats because we're in a kind of a red area. As I traveled around collecting signatures into more rural and red communities like in Graham County and Greenlee County, I found the same sentiment. It's our combined values, or common values as Democrats, that is the glue that binds the urban Democrats with the rural Democrats. And our rural neighbors, they are oftentimes way outnumbered. And so if you get the opportunity, I would encourage you to go visit those communities because they're moving forward as best they can, sharing our democratic values, passing on our message. So when you go to those communities and you meet with them, go to their events, you strengthen their resolve, it strengthens our party, and it actually makes for a pretty good day trip. This is my first campaign, and you're actually one of the first groups I ever spoke to when we started doing our signature gathering. And I believe that every election needs to be a contest. And that's what we're talking about having a write-in also. Because that's what got me started. And we cannot give away any election without a fight. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or other. It takes money and it takes human resources to run a campaign. If we don't have a candidate, it's a giveaway. And when it's a giveaway, what we do is we free up the other side's resources. They can take those resources and put them towards other campaigns, more competitive campaigns. So what we need to do is we need to challenge them, force them to commit their resources, and make them run against us. And when we do that, you know what we get? We get a very healthy democracy. I submitted more than 10,000 signatures, and no other Democrat is running against me. And we got those 10,000 signatures from working with groups like you. And I got to tell you, as we got close to the end of that line, and at the end of the time, it was amazing when we'd go out to the mailbox and open it up, and we'd have letters in there from all the different counties. Sometimes there'd be a petition sheet in there with only 2 or 3 names on it. Other times we had 3 or 4 petition sheets completely filled up. We had more than 90% of the required signatures online. So we had to make up 600. We had over 3,800. There was no challenging us. We are there. Most Arizonans will agree on this. And that is the safety of our miners is nonpartisan. Because we know that hazards are nonpartisan. So I need to get my message out to more than 1.5 million voters now. And that's a big ask. So I could use your help. One way we could get help is, of course, financially. You could donate $5,500 now, or you could set up a recurring commitment contribution if you feel like it. We are in a historic time. We have an historic opportunity ahead of us. Almost a perfect storm of Democratic Party enthusiasm and communities that are ready for change. You can also help me get the word out just by volunteering to be a part of my campaign. And when you do that, you will only be in the front row seat for change. You will be participating in a historic election. I want to thank you so much for letting me come and talk to you, and I am happy to take any of your tough questions right now.
What is the current mine inspector doing that you would do differently?
I'm going to change your question. I'm going to do something because the current mine inspector isn't doing a whole lot. So my first answer is I'm going to do something. And the reason I say that, and I know it sounds kind of snarky, But we have not had an annual report as required by the statutes in nearly 5 years now. There's not been any newsletters going out, and so I have no proof that there's anything really happening. So the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to do stuff.
What?
One of the things that we will do right away is a lot of what happens, the way this game works, the way that the laws work, is we have the statutes over here that's done by the state legislature, and the legislature says, mine inspector, that's what you are supposed to be enforcing. To do that, we can write administrative codes or rules, okay? When I went looking for those rules, I did not think they exist. What I discovered was they do exist, and they're like 30 years old. And so a lot of them are outdated, and a lot of them are extraordinarily vague. So we're going to edit those, and we're going to update them so that they are more timeless. And what that means, for example, if you're doing electrical work and you read the current administrative code, what it says is, whoever's doing that work should know what they're doing, and if they don't, whoever's watching them should know what they're doing. That leaves the door open, if you ask me. So what I would do in that case is I say, no, we're going to put a specification, we're going to put a requirement, just like there's a requirement to be the state mine inspector. We're going to make a requirement that if you're doing electrical work, you need to have gone through the trades, maybe through an apprenticeship program, go to a trade school, maybe the military, but you have to have a certain level of certification before you can do that work. And we'll push that straight on through. So that's one thing that we'll do right away.
So you're going to write some administrative rules. What else are you going to do?
What else are we going to do? We're going to make sure that the inspections are getting done. I've been out to Morenci, which is one of the largest mines in the country. And when I talk to folks out there, they've never even seen a state mine inspector. So we will be out there doing the job and actually making sure that the inspections are getting done. On top of that, there's a requirement that we go to every open pit mine once a year and every underground mine 4 times a year. There's no requirement for me to come back and talk to you. I would encourage open forums that just like I'm talking to you today, only I would like more of those hard questions. And you ask me, what's happening over here at World Copper? What happened when you went up there? Let's have those conversations.
Around 2000, several of the mines were bought out by conglomerates outside of the United States. When they did that, what was the safety changes or their possible safety changes, because many of those companies tried to remove the unions that had been in there for years?
So most of our safety comes from MSHA. Are you guys familiar with MSHA, the Mine Safety Health Administration? Okay, that's the federal level, all right? So just because others come in, we are still required to work within what the feds have outlined for us. So if you want to go to a mine and do any kind of work at all, you have to, first of all, be allowed to be trained to go on that mine, and that's following MSHA training. So to go to an open pit, you already have to have 24 hours of safety training before you can show up. So it doesn't matter if you're part of a conglomerate, Rio Tinto, Udbay, any of those. You have to follow those rules. Beyond that, every year after you've been trained on that, you have to go back for a refresher course, and that's for all of the miners that are there. On top of that, you have to be trained on specific hazards. So if you're somebody like me that would show up at a variety of different mines, they had kind of an overview hazard list that we would have, so we worked with. But let's say you're a driver and you're going to drive trucks on site. You will have a whole additional bunch of training that you're going to have to do that job. So when it comes to those conglomerates coming in, they will be following our rules. And to that, some of those conglomerates actually have some pretty good safety practices. And we might want to pull some of that down to help us out a little bit.
Well, with your mine inspection, with AI coming in and several companies now going to automation on their vehicles, what is that going to do for your inspection to overall for safety?
You know, that's a really good question. When we're talking about vehicles, I think what you're talking about most likely is like the haul trucks. And one of the dangers we have, those are extraordinarily dangerous, partly because they're huge, and it's an incredibly boring job. That's why there's already a massive amount of technology going into those haul trucks just to look at the operator's eyes and their head. If they start to bob, that calls somebody. So with AI, I don't know if it's actually AI that's going to do it, but it's going to be autonomous behavior. They're going to be looking for things, and it's going to do things that those of us that we know we're going to get bored if we do that day in and day out. So there are some strengths there. I don't know how to audit that yet. We're going to have to figure that part out. We're in a brave new world there.
The mine procedures themselves, are you responsible for seeing that the mine administrators are safely handling the job as well as the employees?
Oh, absolutely. My intent is that this is not going to be a confrontational relationship. It's going to be a friendly relationship. I see the mine inspector's job and the safety of our miners, we're going to be an additional arm to their safety programs. most of these mine sites, they don't want to have injuries. They want to follow. They want to be safe, because as soon as something goes sideways, they're not making any money. They're shutting down. So safety is to their benefit. What we're going to do is we're going to work with them and make sure that we're aligned, and we're going to. And I hope that kind of answers your question there.
Thank you.
As you know, we've met several times, so we're kind of on a first name basis. And I'm not sure if you're aware of that. I'm a retired RN. ER was my favorite, my focus on clinically. So I've been to Morenci and out to Patagonia twice, and I've only done a couple of conferences here with this Copper World. So my focus was just on water, but because the RN is still in my head, I want to talk about EMT, the EMS system. So I noticed in Morenci, they have a beautiful little clinic, hospital, 24-hour urgent care, helipad. I didn't see the chopper on the pad, and I made the comment, how many times do you ship, how many days, or how many times a week do you fly out? And she alluded to several days. So in other words, these guys are going to get hurt. And there is, I don't know if they only have what level of healthcare provider they have, but I mean, obviously they have to call a trauma center and they got to get them out. So that's one of my issues, is that are they all set up correctly? And I know you would have somebody who would go in and check that. I looked around in the clinic, they had everything Joint Commission would love. I mean, you could see all the trauma equipment and the crash carts, etc. In Patagonia, I saw them coming out with the buses. They truck the guys in and truck them out. So my thought was, because of the environmental dust and dirt on there, are they showering before they leave the site, or do they have coveralls so they can take that off so that they're not taking that contaminated dirt to their house? I don't know if that's something that's anyone's looking at.
I can't tell you whether anybody's looking at. That's a really good thing to bring up, but I can tell you from my experience, what I've run into is they call it the dry. So a lot of times mining is filthy dirty. I mean, filthy work. And so most miners, what they do is they go to the dry. That's the shower. And in some mines, they actually still do this. They have baskets that are on pulleys. You put your clothes in the basket, you bring it up, and they hang it from the ceiling, and you put a lock on it. And that's not your locker. That's not your locker where you put things. So it's pretty commonplace for that. Now, I have been to smelters, for example, where it's extraordinarily dangerous. And for us to go into a smelter, you would put on Tyvek wear, and you'd have the full white bunny suit. I would expect that there would also be the shower after you take that bunny suit off, because that's also very nasty. I've been to mine sites where they find asbestos in the ore. And in those cases, again, you're wearing the white Tyvek type suits, you're wearing full respirators and that sort of thing. So I would expect that to be something that's important, but I think that's a really good point, and I will follow up on that.
Thank you. Hi. I heard you mention early on that there were unions in some of the mines, and I'm wondering what union trades you have in the mines, and who's represented there.
Sorry, if that's the way it sounded, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. What I was getting at is, I know there's been a lot of union busting in Arizona, and I don't work directly with the unions, but what I'm saying is that when it comes to setting the standards for the work that can get done, that I think part of the standards we would expect is an apprenticeship program, and I was using electrical for an example, but that can be for pipe fitting, welding, and a variety of other trades.
Well, the trades, they bring you good people, you know.
And it's about safety too. I mean, they train them safely. Yeah. So that's where I was headed with that.
So as citizens here in Green Valley, I think my concern sometimes is the dust control. If we don't do it dry, we're just breathing it. So what contamination issues can you solve to keep us from breathing all that stuff?
And that's the tough question I was waiting for. And because I knew that tough question also is going to be, what about the water situation?
Yeah.
How can you deal with that? And these are two big things, right? And I apologize, this is going to sound a little bit like I'm going to deflect it. But the way our legislature is set up is that the mine inspector is not really involved with the water and the dust mitigation, because that goes through ADEQ, and that's what the director of Arizona Department of Equality does. So when the mine is permitted, it's through ADEQ that the water and the dust permitting and the rules that are in place for that are. So it's really not something that's in the mine inspector's purview. But there's a huge but there. And that is, as an elected official, as an elected state official, I don't answer to the governor. I don't answer to anybody other than you and the legislature. So if I ran into this recently, and when she talked to the mine inspector said, you need to contact ADEQ. And that was the end of the conversation. My attitude is, no, that's not right. It's the mine inspector's job to go talk to the ADEQ and say, we got a problem here. Because as a constituent, you're one going in. You elect me, I'm 1.5 million going in and talking to that. And it's not going to be confrontational, but I will be your representative. Because if it's happening on the mine, even though it fits in another department, I need to be your representative working with that department.
Very good.
Well, that was kind of my question too, is if you see something, say for instance, you see a slush pond that is in violation of the environmental, it could cause an hazardous. Does AEQ go with you to make those inspections for, or do they ever travel with you?
I would hope that would be the case. Okay, I'm not in the role yet, so I haven't been able to do that. But it's exactly what I would expect to have happen. Once in that role, let's say we do come across that, and they're not there. When we have that conversation, it might be, yeah, mine inspector, let's go out there together and look at it, or let's go make sure that we are on the same page. Because sometimes it might be bad, and sometimes it might not. But we need to know which one it is.
One short question. Given the amount of mining that goes on here in the state of Arizona, how many inspectors are there in your team?
Not enough. And I say that, and this is where we talk about what we're going to do something different, is we have to be extraordinarily efficient with our inspections. And that will be something we're going to have to push forward for more and more. So that's why it's really important to elect more Democrats into our legislature so that we can get more support for the miners in the mining office, particularly since we know copper is growing. There is no way Arizona can keep up with the demand, and we are the largest copper state in the country.
Do you have anything do you have a budget where it can be increased or go to the legislature to get it increased for that reason alone?
Yes, the budget right now is $2.4 million, and there's about, I'm counting about 10 mine inspectors, and there's another department in there, and that's for reclamation. And I'm not sure how many people are in that.
At one point, I think Community Water did a conservation workshop a while ago, very crowded, all sorts of things. But I think one of the things that I believe it was the CEO of the company said, was that their estimate was that aquifer would be dropping, at that time, it would be dropping 200 to 400 feet a year with all the water that Hud Bank Copper World was using. Huge issue.
It's a huge issue, and like I say, I don't mean to be deflecting, but that's an ADEQ issue, and then even they're going to have challenges, because if we start talking about what's happening on federal land, then we're even locked out of that conversation until we get the 1872 Mining Act changed, and then we can be brought back to that table.
Because ADQ and the mines have a relationship that they rely upon each other, I think, too heavily for their inspection and reporting. So, yeah, water is a big problem for them.
Absolutely.
All right, well, good luck.
My wife is back here. We have envelopes, and if you would mind giving us some contact information, we'd like to include you to our newsletter and let you know what we're doing. Hear from you.
All right.
So, our next speaker, and thank heaven, Brett, you contacted me this morning because I don't believe our other speaker is going to show up. Brett Newby is running for the Superintendent of Education a couple of months ago, and he didn't make it, and I called, I texted, and he just did not make it. Well, George and Mike and I were all feeling, God, did we not follow up with him? Didn't he know that it was today or that Saturday? So instead, we all talked about our education experiences. Brett, it was kind of fun. We missed you, but we had a little more wine and stuck around and told some fun stories. So, but he made it today. And is your wife with you today? She is the reason he didn't make it last time. And it looks like you've got some children. He's got his mom here too. So Brett, come on up. And I don't know if you heard video guy, would like you to stay.
Okay. X marks the spot? This is good? Okay.
Even afterwards,
Okay.
when you're talking.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here. Sorry we missed you last time, but we had some medical emergency and hospital issues and things like that. So, but thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today. What a lively group on a holiday weekend. You guys are, for it and helping to protect our democracy. So, thank you for doing that. I was looking at some information about Green Valley and all the things that you all do. And you guys are out there every day protecting our democracy, supporting our public schools, defending our voting rights, protecting our water, and building a future that's rooted in decency, fairness, and opportunity. So thank you so much for all of that hard work. Those values matter to me deeply as a father, as a dad. I guess that's the same thing. But an educator and an Arizonan. So thank you so much for that. Tonight I want to talk about three things. The future of public education in Arizona, the importance of restoring trust and stability and accountability to our educational leadership here in Arizona, and then also why local engagement matters more than ever. So my name is Brad Newby. I'm running to be the next Superintendent of Public Instruction here in Arizona. I'm an educator. I'm a behavior analyst. I'm a university professor. But most importantly, I'm a father, and I'm someone who's spent my career working with our students and our kids here in Arizona and families, getting the services that they need, and going through that battle with them. I've worked in schools, homes, in the community, and making sure that our parents and teachers are helping our kids succeed every day. I'm also raising children here in Arizona, so these issues are not theoretical to me. These are everyday things. These are things that I've experienced with my own kids in public school here in Arizona. I see firsthand what families are dealing with: teacher shortages, overcrowding in the classroom, burnout, rising costs, and political chaos that's replacing practical solutions. Arizona families are tired of constant fighting. As I travel across the state, talk to families, talk to teachers, people in the community, they want leadership that is going to be competent, compassionate, and also focused on solving our problems. Arizona has incredible students, teachers, and communities. But for too long, our public schools have been asked to do more with less. And that needs to stop. Arizona continues to struggle with teacher recruitment and retention. Many educators leave because they can't afford to stay or live here. They can't pay their bills. They're delivering food on the weekends. They're moving in with relatives to be able to cover their rent. Our rural districts in southern Arizona, as you all know, those communities are feeling the impact. When those schools close, it's detrimental to our rural communities. Those kids are going to have to travel further to school. Families have to move to be able to find education for their kids. Our support staff struggles. We don't have enough bus drivers. We don't have enough paraprofessionals. We don't have enough cafeteria workers. And our special education supports are obliterated. We cannot say we value education while constantly underfunding the people who make it work. Public education is not an expense. It's an investment into Arizona's future economy, our workforce, our democracy, and our communities. Public schools are often the center of our Arizona communities. When we have natural disasters, there's a fire, a flood, people go to our community schools to get the resources that they need, to get access to things and information. They bring together our families, our veterans, our grandparents, our educators, and our local businesses. Strong schools shows that it increases our community stability, our workforce readiness, our property values, and the economic growth within our communities, which makes it viable and important for those rural communities to have our public schools there. When schools struggle, our communities feel it, especially the rural communities everywhere within that community. Southern Arizona understands the importance of community. Right here in Green Valley, you understand stewardship, civic engagement, and planning for the future. Arizona deserves educational options. but we also deserve accountability and transparency. Public tax dollars should come with public accountability. We cannot continue to deliver massive amounts of funding, divert massive amounts of funding away from our neighborhood public schools without any oversight. Arizona families want transparency on spending, outcomes, student performance, financial accountability, and that matters for every child, every zip code, and every public student. Supporting public schools is not anti-parent, but public schools are the foundation that serves all families. We need to stop treating educators like political punching bags. Teachers are professionals. We must entertain education because we care deeply about those kids. So here's my solutions. We're going to increase teacher pay. We're going to expand our mentorship and our teacher retention supports. We're going to grow our pipeline of teachers locally. We're going to support educational services. We're going to provide funding for our support staff in our schools. We're going to reduce unnecessary political interference in the classrooms from the Department of Education. And if we want better outcomes for students, we must first support the adults that are serving those students every day, which means it's teachers and our support staff in our schools. You all know that democracy is not self-sustaining. It depends on people showing up, voting, volunteering, attending meetings, and having difficult discussions respectfully. But voters are exhausted by the division and the dysfunction. They want leaders who are going to bring people together instead of constantly tearing each other apart. That's why I want to localize the Department of Education. I want equitable seats at the table for our rural communities, for all of our groups of people that we have here in Arizona. Arizona is vastly diverse. We should all have a say in how our education and our public schools are run. We don't have to agree on everything, but we can move Arizona forward together. And I remain hopeful about Arizona. I believe in our educators, our students, and I believe our communities like Green Valley can continue to stay engaged and fight for that democracy. Progress does not happen because people sit on the sidelines. It happens because ordinary people decide to show up consistently for their communities. Arizona's best days are ahead of us if we are willing to work together, lead with compassion, and put people over politics. I'm ready for your questions.
Wait for the microphone.
I'll ask the question, first question. We've heard two other candidates running, Dr. Butts and Dr. Maurice. What would you do differently from the others that would encourage us to vote for you?
Sure. On day one, I would audit the ESA program. $1 billion has gone through that program. We don't know where that money is going. We don't know who's using that money, and we don't know where that money is coming from. So a full audit, and then those results would be turned over to the Attorney General's office, and I'd work with the Attorney General to look at any fraud or misuse of those funds, and then putting guardrails on that program to ensure that those funds are used how they were originally intended for our kids with special needs, and then also ensuring that we are developing and bringing back the supports that we need in our special education. Because we sort of just gave away that money to say, go find some support somewhere. Now we have a lot of empty classrooms, and we can put it back into the budget and bring that money back in and invest in our kids with special needs and our teachers who are working with their special needs kids.
What do you mean by interference by the Department of Education in the classroom?
So I don't feel that the Superintendent of Public Instruction should be saying headline gathering things and not backing those items up. So the Superintendent of Public Instruction, in my mind, is somebody that is bringing the communities together, that is supporting our students and our communities, and being able to have resources that are supporting our teachers and our staff, and being able to put that into the classroom for our students every day.
What specifically do you mean?
Can you clarify your question?
No, because your statement was you want to stop the Department of Education interfering in the classroom. That was, I believe, what you said you wanted to do.
I don't believe I said it. If I did, I misspoke. I'm not sure.
Okay, what did you say about the Department of Education?
That we should be collaborative in our results to support our school districts.
That's
I read a study fairly recently to do with the production or the downgrading of reading and mathematics here in the United States. I don't know it was specific to Arizona, but it may apply also to Arizona. And that's been since COVID. During COVID, there were a lot of things that occurred that caused issues, of course, in the classroom. One of my things is, does the Superintendent of Education have anything to do with, for example, not permitting cell phones to be used in the classroom? I only bring this up because, of course, I grew up in a totally different era, and we never had the idea of having a phone or anything like that, not even, of course, an adding machine or anything like that. So I'm just wondering, they've attributed to some of this regression in our students' ability to read and do mathematics with the fact that there's so much use of cell phones. Is there a way that can be abolished during the school day from the classroom?
Yeah.
What's causing them to be allowed to do it? The other thing I'd kind of like to know is, in the schools here, do people, when the teacher comes up, which I think the teachers are not getting the respect they should be getting, when the teacher comes into the classroom, do the children and students stand up and say good morning or good morning ma'am and stuff like that? I mean, I'm asking something that's probably, as I'm hearing from the laughter, are you kidding? But is that something that one is able to put into place as a superintendent of education in all our public schools?
So your first question about cell phones and our math and reading scores, I would say, looking at the data, a lot of that would have to do with cutting support staff and being able to put interventions in place that are evidence-based for our kids to be able to get their math and reading scores up. Because the first line items that are cut off of the budgets for a few decades now in the Arizona legislature, and our school districts, fighting for every dollar that they can try to get without having to go to the voters every 2 years to get more money that is already in the budget for them. Those support staff and those support resources for intervention for math and reading are the first line items that have been cut. So for me, it would be putting the resources back in place to see if those interventions put in place are increasing those math and reading scores. That would be the most number one for me as superintendent of public instruction, is because reading and math are important life skills, and so I think every child graduating from Arizona schools should be able to read and do math at an appropriate grade level. Across the nation, I think the reading level minimum, or the average reading level, is below 9th grade. So I think across the board we need to do better as a society to ensure that our kids are reading and doing math more consistently. As far as the cell phones, I think the school districts are on board with that. I think they're putting in their policies. A lot of the school districts are putting that in place for the teachers. I know some teachers like technology, and they're allowing the students that are in higher grade levels, like high school, to use their phones. There's some technology out there that they use to be able to do quizzes and different things like that. There's some that have them check their phones into a drawer or on the wall. So I don't know that it's necessarily a problem. I think it's just something that a lot of legislators are saying is the problem, without having to really look at, we're cutting the budget and they don't have the tools and resources they need as sort of a scapegoat for that. And so I would ensure that we are putting the information out, that we are providing the tools and resources for our teachers to be able to increase math and reading scores across the board.
In Arizona, we rank number 50th across the nation. Not a proud thing to be proud of. However, there are 3 or 4 states that have recently, that are just ahead of us. Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana have brought in curriculum master teacher programs, and they found there was a direct correlation between a student's relationship on a one-on-way basis, and they were able to increase their capacity for better reading and writing. Is there anything in your curriculum thought process that we can maybe increase our capacity without a lot of increase in costs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, funds are funds, and we haven't had them, so it'd be nice to have them to see what would happen with them. But we have teachers. My own daughter's teacher, for example, is a master reading teacher. And she puts interventions in place in her own classroom that have allowed those children to go from below reading level when they entered her classroom to above grade level reading by the end of the year. So I want to bring those types of teachers together and put equitable coalitions together, because there's school districts that are doing great things with very little resources that we could share with other districts, other community schools, that we can share those ideas and bring everybody to the table and be more collaborative. So it's not district versus district versus district and everybody's doing 100 different things. I think if we can start to share those ideas and those types of things, that we can then build things that are evidence-based, that are in structure, but aren't costing us a lot of money, because there's amazing teachers here in Arizona and we need to keep them because they're doing great things.
I have a two-part question, actually. So are you in support of the Save Our Schools referendum to limit income and, in my opinion, redirect the program back to its original roots? And my second part of my question is your feeling on religious education in public schools.
Yeah, so the first part is, yes, I am a supporter of the SOS initiative. I signed it on day one. I feel like it is a great start. We need more things put in place. It does set some guardrails and some mandates in there, which is great because we don't have those at the moment. As far as your second point, I believe in a separation of church and state, because that's what's in the Constitution, and if our public dollars are funding the education, then we should abide by the Constitution.
Right behind me.
Okay, I just heard Cochise County in the Sierra Vista area, 3 elementary schools closed. Now, I realize on day one you can't fix this really that fast, but what kind of, for overall, because there's 15 counties. Now, Continental is our local elementary that's in the Green Valley. Santa Rita is where my daughter graduated in 2002. By the way, she's an engineer. And it was because of the calculus classes that we had awesome teachers. So they're not going to have an issue because people are wanting to move to Santa Rita. Mm-hmm. But Cochise has now got a problem with 3 elementary schools closing.
Yeah, it's very detrimental. Anytime a school closes, it breaks my heart, because that schools are lifeblood of our community. And so, especially in our rural communities, I'm sure there are schools that we don't even know have closed. Our metro areas, we have school districts that are closing 9 schools. So I can only imagine what is happening in those rural areas. A few things that we've talked about, we've started to create a coalition of like-minded state legislators, Republicans, Democrats, and independents, to start to look at some different options that we can provide, like potentially putting housing in some of those closed school areas, so that we can provide housing to our up-and-coming teachers, maybe teachers that are looking for the future to retire and they want to go to the community in Arizona where they want to retire, as an added benefit, just because not necessarily needing to give them more money, right? Obviously, everybody wants more money, and that's a great thing. But different types of benefits, because that's what our top universities are doing. They're building housing and providing the housing to recruit professors to those universities, and we could be able to do that. There are some states that are doing that, and so there's some data starting to come out of that. But like I said, localizing the Department of Education, and being able to support our local and rural communities in being able to provide different types of benefits for those communities. And then those teachers are moving because they can't afford a house in Paradise Valley or in Glendale or in Flagstaff. And so maybe they want to move to a smaller community where it's a little bit more affordable and they can live and work in the community in which they are educating those kids.
Well, I think it's important to talk about the class movement, but it's also, we need to make sure we're talking about the administrators, principals, and the local school boards. How do you go about supporting them and increasing our capacity for the student?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would like to see a little bit more community involvement in those choices of administrators. I know a lot of our school districts are hiring consulting firms that sort of represent all of those folks, and they get really good package deals. My opponent has said that she says it's only 10% of the school district's budget for the administrators, but that line item in the budget doesn't decrease when the school district's budget decreases. So it becomes a bigger percentage. And so I would really look at that a little more, but also localizing the Department of Education allows us to have more community involvement and those equitable seats from those communities being able to have a voice in who is running your public schools.
I have one last question then. Educating teachers. U of A has done a pretty good job, but many of our teachers then go to Mexico for a higher salary. How would you go about helping our university system educate more teachers to keep here in the state?
Yeah, I think collaborating with all of our universities here in Arizona, I think they all have wonderful teaching programs. I went to NAU to get my certificate to become a behavior analyst. So I think partnering with them and then regionalizing those partnerships where we put those teachers in place and support our rural communities or underserved communities that need more support in getting those teachers, and really developing our teachers and being able to give them more tools and resources while they're learning to become a teacher. We can keep our high standards for our teaching credentials, but we can also provide more support and more professional development for those teachers that are wanting to teach in Arizona. Because you go to the university and you're like, I want to be a teacher, and then you look at the salaries for the school district and you're like, maybe I don't want to be a teacher, right? Or they get their certificate and they move to a different state. And so I think it's important that we're also investing in our teacher development, and we can use that localization in our partnerships with our universities here in Arizona, which do a really great job of producing really great teachers.
Yeah, one of the programs I've heard about, and I don't know where else it's been implemented, but it was originally started in Colorado, was the state would pay teachers to go to rural areas. They would pay off their debts and loans for them to appreciate an amount of time to work in the field. LD19, as you've heard Jackie talk about, with 5 counties, is very rural, even though we're in the middle of Pima County and Green Valley here. So we can use all the help we can get in our rural areas.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You can visit my website for all of my policy information, newby.com.
We have all kinds of literature back there to read.
One thing I want to mention, I've become quite involved with the Sopery School in Amato. And Chris, you were kind of alluding to the fact that the children perhaps are not as respectful as they were in the UK. But I can tell you this, that the times that I'm there with the teacher and the principal, the kids come to school and they hug their teachers. They hug their principal. I don't know about you. I had a wonderful elementary experience, but I never thought to hug Mrs. Doherty. No way. So I think that there's still a great deal of respect out there. That is, granted, it's only one school. And we, this group that I belong to, we give these children Christmas gifts. And we've got a Santa Claus. And the kids are so excited, it's hard to keep them in control. We also we buy sugar cookies and they decorate them. I mean, tell you, they go back to their classroom, covered with frosting. But the teacher says, okay, we're gonna line up. They line up. They are absolutely wonderful, Chris. We hear about the bad situations where teachers have been confronted with maybe the parents more than the children. But anyhow, I can speak for that school. They all love the teachers and the principal. They've got, the principal had to come back out of retirement. She's 72 years old. And the teacher that teaches special ed, she is 70 years old. And she is up for Teacher of the Year award from the Amato School. So life is pretty good, really. But we got to keep that school open as well.
Before you leave today, make sure you come back. Brett talked about it. Save Our Schools. The petition's back here. Please sign it. One of the first things that's on this list is to do background check for teachers. Why and the H wasn't this being done? we can make sure that gets changed.
They
So
do
please
it.
come back and sign the petition.
They do a background check for anybody that volunteers, not for our group, but people who help the teachers in school. They go through a serious background check, and it takes about 6 months before they're approved. So why teachers? I don't know. Brett, thank you much for coming. We got 3 wonderful candidates, so let's get one of them in that chair. Thank you, Brett. Everybody have a good week.